So I think Vikas, I'll start with you. My first question to you, let's talk about employee experience.
Yeah.
Employee experience, I heard Ms. Mukta also talk about it. It starts from the time you screen, you onboard. There are so many facets about employee experience. You walk into your office. From a cubicle kind of a structure, we've moved into open spaces to create that positive experience. Now, with most of the workspaces and employees going remote, hybrid, employee experience is compromised to quite a lot of extent because the delivery mechanism has to change. We have to adopt. And it's not just a small deviation, it's a huge change technology wise that we have to, or even, uh, a purpose of the organization to talk about. So what do you see? What is the future of a workplace, and how do you see, the current scenario? Are you taking it as a challenge? Do you see there are scopes, gaps that you can use to your advantage to create that positive experience?
Right. Thanks, Verna. Okay, guys, I made Verna promise that she would not ask difficult questions and she's going to be nice to me. But still, just to be prepared, because so much of cognitive load here, I made some notes, so that I'm just ready for the occasion. Um, so I'll address this question, starting with what is happening right now. To look at the future, and future is a big one because with tech at the heart of everything that we do at the workplace, I'm not even sure that how much of a future can we really visualize. But you can get some segues from looking at the present. And I think if you look at 2022, since we're almost ending the year, I think it'll be a good retrospective to do and see how the year has been. In my view, I think this year has been a year of hashtags and fluff. Okay, and I'll explain to you why, and that will give you an answer to the future of HR and workplaces as well. I think the current year has been a year of hashtag, say, hashtag moonlighting, hashtag silent quitting, hashtag great resignation, great layoffs, so on and so forth. And a lot of this is basically old wine, new bottles, because some of us who've been in the industry for decades now would know that silent quitting is not new. So the marketers have actually had a field day, making a lot of money with these hashtags. And what happens is that at the end of the day, an HR practitioner is still left out there that how do I solve for this? And starts looking at something new. So I very strongly believe that before you start looking at new, get back to basics. All right. Now, if you look at what are the challenges that a lot of HR practitioners are facing today, I think I'd start from something very basic that we are still, despite all the hype and song dance drama around saying that new tech has arrived, new systems are available, we still in most of the organizations have disparate systems. And these disparate systems create so much of a challenge, and Vishy would agree with me, that when he has to do analytics and has to pull out data from multiple sources, in the absence of data lake, it just gets crazy. We also deal with a lot of app fatigue because suddenly there's so much of tech, there's so many new practices out there, and then we go out and buy new technology, buy new practices or borrow new practices, and then we suddenly realize that the employee at the heart of it all is bamboozled with a whole lot of stuff that he or she doesn't know how to deal with. And then there are challenges around legacy systems, so on and so forth. So if you look at the current state of HR, I would still say that while the vision is great, but our present is not really in a very happy place. And that's where these kind of conferences and connects are extremely helpful. So what we discussed during the pre-panel was that we would like to leave you with as many best practices and tactical best practices. So it's not enough to say that, okay, it's important to do employee experience journey mapping. One also needs to understand the how of it. Because employee experience journey mapping is not just about saying, okay, just map the journey, but what goes into it, design thinking goes into it. So let's get those answers out. So I just wanted to set that tone right up front, Varuna. Now, talking about the future of HR, I keep saying that, that there are some emerging themes that are occurring, and I don't know if you've heard of it. So stop doing hashtag moonlighting searches and hashtag, whatever, work from home and all. Start doing hashtag organization network analysis, for example. And I do not know if you've really heard of it, but I think one of my colleagues will talk about things like, how do you move from asking to listening, from a feedback point of view. And ONS sits at the heart of it. There are these kind of practices available which actually help you measure real inclusion in an organization. So we speak about diversity, for example, and that's going to come up very soon that, when we talk about diversity, it's all about counting numbers, isn't it? What percentage of women, what percentage of LGBTQI, what percentage of PWD. But that's not the end story. The end story is to count inclusion, because diversity is about counting numbers and inclusion is about making those numbers count. And that's going to come as a very important theme. I think predictives, so we're moving from a lot of diagnostic dashboards and Power BI kind of tools to something known as predictive, and then further on prescriptive. So today, you have business models, you have data models available to say which of your employees will attrite next year, same time. But the best part, you also have predictive models in place to say that which of your employees are going to be burning out soon. Where do you need to put some corrective in place to address well-being matters? So these are business models available. But at the heart of all of this is data, and this data is not just numbers anymore. And that's another myth that I want to break, that going forward, HR is understanding that data is not just numbers. Data is also about the communication that happens in the organization, the English or the language that you use in the organization. And that's where things like semantic searches, neuro-linguistic programming, and so many others kind of come in. And one of my favorites, or rather a very huge theme that has emerged in HR, and that's going to set the tone for future, is the skills architecture, or the skills center of excellence. Today, you have technology available which takes a role in your organization, goes out, does a net scraping, and gives you back data to say that which are the emerging skills, which are the adjacent skills, which are the declining skills. Basis those skills, you revisit your job descriptions, you hire better, and not only that, your entire talent management process is wired. We've all been in talent conversations, right? Where promotion conversations happen, where there's a manager, and the only data that HR has to submit to them to take that conversation ahead is to say performance rating so-and-so, tenure of the employee so-and-so, and then there's a lot of gut feel, right? Or the optics, or the bias, which says that I think this person should be promoted. Now, I'm not saying that these variables and parameters are not important, but what's going to come up now, and it's actually here, I think there are about 230 or 240 organizations in India this year who have successfully created a skills architecture, is that you'll also get something known as a skills score. And these skills are not competencies or fluffy stuff which you cannot measure. These are actual hardcore skills which are measurable. And basis that input, then a talent conversation goes forward, and then you decide how do you want to move on the promotion. So on these themes, I think what is happening and what is the future of HR typically is around starting with reorchestrating of HR, and which is, I think, rethink HR or reimagine HR, whatever terms you want to use. It's about looking at your people capability, your processes in HR, and the technology that empowers all of that. How do you orchestrate all of that to come together? It's not enough to have an HRIMS in place, for example. Okay, I always say this, that most of the HRIMSs, they are all glorified Excels, whether it's an Oracle or a Workday or any other. They do a great job on workflow management, but what they don't do is provide you intelligence. And that's the layer that a lot of HR professionals are now building on top of that. And this is not tech talk that I'm talking about. This is all about how do you orchestrate systems and processes together to give a better, learning journey, for example. So there's going to be a lot of reorchestrating of HR, that how do you layer new age systems on top of legacy systems? How do you empower HR professionals? Okay. And there's a classic debate of waterfall versus agile. How many of us as an HR practitioner are thinking more like a product manager? That product thinking philosophy has to come into action, and that's really where the future of HR sits. And the third most important point is this whole adaptive workplace experience design. So guys, I mean, today you're sitting with multiple generations in the workforce, okay? It's all there. You've got a Gen Z, and you've got a Gen X, and you've got a millennial, and then, of course, in the next decade or so, you'll have alphas. So with all of this happening, there is a battle of the old guard versus the new guard, right? There are workplace conflicts, whether they are implied or they are explicit. Now, how do you manage for all of this? And everybody's saying, let's personalize experiences. Let's hyper-personalize experiences. The key to do this is learn lessons from Netflix. Okay, and that's what HR has started doing now. And this is a long journey, by the way. It's going to take about 2-3 years for HRs to really, kind of get there. But if you look at Netflix, what happens there? If you're an action movie buff, okay, every time you log into Netflix, because you have watched a lot of action movies, you'll see a lot of action movies in your feed, right or wrong? Now, what is happening? There's a personalized feed that is emerging, right? Can we not rethink HR going forward to say that, can HR policies be by the people, of the people, for the people? I know there's a couple of people here in the room who've heard me say this multiple times. And I say that HR policies, Gone are those days when they would only be orchestrated by HR folks, okay? The way to do this is what Mukta also said, that you first do personas in an organization, and then you do employee journey maps using empathy maps, etc. And then you identify that for what persona, what works. A classic example, 47-year-old guy looking at, money or loan from the company for daughter's higher education. Whereas a 22, 23-year-old lad is possibly looking for, can I get a 5,000 rupee voucher because it's my birthday and a day off? Now the asks are different. And we all know that, okay? But we haven't orchestrated our HR like that. And that, as Mukta said, that one size fits all doesn't work anymore. It's a different strokes for different folks. So how do you make your workplace adaptive? This is known as adaptive design. Can I create a workplace experience which is customized to a certain persona? The policies are customized, and then you take it forward. And there's lots that needs to be done in here. It's not just about tech. It's about how do you think of HR? First, that mindset has to change. I keep saying that we as HR professionals, we need to move, I wrote this, we need to move to a mindset which says, from we know all the answers, okay, to no one knows the answers, let's discover. And that is the mindset that we need to get in. So that, I think, pretty much is how the HR would look like in the near future. Tech is at the heart of it, definitely. A lot of people say tech is an enabler. I do not believe that. I think tech is a game changer. And a classic example of that is Grammarly, if you've used that. Yeah. Today, a lot of us don't bother writing, right? I mean, just write and then suddenly it gets corrected. In one of the forums, I was having a conversation on, conversational AIs. I said, imagine around 5 years down the line, what if there was a solution to say that whenever a manager and a subordinate is having a conversation, there is some tech out there which says, hey, listen, this was not right, correct it. Okay, fancy, I know. But, I'm just saying, we have to open up our minds. We have to think people. We have to think employees. The last message that I'll leave, I know I'm taking a lot of time. The last message I want to leave is that HR is not about only looking at, serving. I do agree that we have to have a service orientation. But understand the heart of all of this is actually productivity. We talk about employee burnout. The reality is, if you actually do deep surveys in FGDs, people are happy when they are productive. They're not happy with trophy perks like, okay, I've got a beanbag on the office. Tell me one HR practitioner who agrees on this, that because I installed beanbags in the office and I gave free lunch and free coffees, therefore my attrition rates went down. None. Doesn't work like that. People are happy when they're productive. And why are they not productive? Because we are not able to empower them. That's the cliched version of that, what you've heard. I think there's more to this. I think you haven't orchestrated your HR journeys to drive productivity. So simple use case, something that I've experimented with in 2013, now I'm seeing a lot of organizations do this, is that can you wire all your HR journeys around something known as a KPI? Now, what does that mean? The minute there is a shortfall in a KPI, okay, your predictive analytics or the predictive layer actually nudges that employee that, in the morning at 8:30, it tells a sales professional that, listen, you had a 100 rupee daily run rate, it's going to land up at 80. However, one of your colleagues, Vishy, he's got an extra funnel or a few leads. You might want to check in with Vishy and get those leads to be converted. You can work on them and cover up your shortfall. Similarly, a learning journey. The minute there is a shortfall in a KPI, can the system and the HR processes be orchestrated to say that because you had a shortfall, therefore, there is a learning course. And this is not a 8-hour program. Nobody likes that, okay? Gone are those days. ADHD or no ADHD. Attention spans have gone down. So can I give a micro-sized, program on, let's say, negotiation or objection handling, which possibly is an area of concern for me because I'm a sales professional. Today, systems are capable. HR practitioners need to open up their mind and orchestrate their processes to adopt to that system. So just getting a system in the absence of process is not going to help. So I just want to leave it there. And yeah, I mean, over to you, Varuna.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Sorry, I just get in the flow and then I just don't know
that was
when to stop.
very insightful, and I'm really looking forward for the future. And
That's actually not the future. I think a lot of it is here, as I said.
And we have shown, the keenness and the eagerness to adopt. We have adopted. I mean, it was a reactive measure because of the exigencies that we were going through. But yeah, if we have a fair insight, we definitely can. I see us there.
Employee needs are different. So are we going to create too much of cluster? See, culture is a dynamic one, of course, we understand. We transform. And for example, COVID, helps us to embrace a different culture, irrespective of what age group you are. But someone was saying like, no, the need of, baby boomer versus Gen Z is very different from a career pathing versus wellness versus, it could be whatever. I mean, it's a difficult situation, right?
It is.
It is.
I don't know. This is not working.
It's working.
Oh,
It's working. It's working.
If I can quickly, I know our time's up. I'll just quickly address this. Your point is right. When you get into hyper personalization, there is definitely there's a contradiction of sorts that emerges. That contradiction, however, stems from the fact or a belief that culture is universal in the organization. So if you have an understanding or a realization to say that within the organization, which is yours, you would have multiple cultures within the teams, multiple cultures within the departments. And just to give you an example, there's an R&D team. Okay, the kind of culture that kind of moves there is different from, let's say, a sales team. High performance versus research, and that's what the point was trying to be made. Now, the same when you apply it to the multiple generations. Okay, and that's where the core of the issue is, that you're seeing conflicts at workplaces where there is an old guard which says, I've been around for 40 years or whatever number of years in this organization. I've brought us here, and here's this new person who's coming and telling me to do things differently, or the expectations are very different. Now, the way to handle this, now this is a problem, acknowledged, okay? The way to handle this really is, the many. One of them is to say, can you start looking at how do you remove this whole bias in the organization? And this bias is not to say that only the new guard has to be trained to say that, listen, the old guard is all right. And the old guard also has to be, going through those conscious, unconscious biases, understanding what is it that they are expected to do to handle these people. So it's a huge task in itself. But that doesn't take away the fact that, your hyper-personalization for HR journeys have to happen. They have to happen even for the old guard, to say that what you were expecting today, or let's say 5 years back, how has it changed today? Okay, so the hyper-personalization is to give each one of them the right tools, the right practices, the right knowledge to be productive. And the last point is that when you have a common goal, all right, and everybody is busy doing that, everything else becomes irrelevant. The problem is people have too much time to think. Okay, generation conflicts happen because of not culture, not they happen because of issues of ego, control, scope, and span. That I hold, I don't know, let go. Okay, and then the minute you address that let go, let the others also take control, and that is a difficult job, and that's the challenge that we all face. And I'm sure when I hear you, I'm sure you're facing that as well. So the problem is definitely there, but hyper-personalization, do not confuse that with cultures, because I think you will still drive different kind of cultures in the organization. Hyper-personalization is to improve the whole EX, and make people more productive. We're not talking rangolis here, we're talking productivity here, all right? So that's the only change that I think we need to think of when we think culture versus, hyper-personalization.
Thank you so much once again,